Alright guys, so for those of you who have seen my channel before, you know that when it comes to subject matter like this is the moment where I do something really, really geeky. I'm going for epic, but it always comes out geeky anyway. And quite frankly, I am not going to apologize for it. Guys, this is the moment, this is the review where I'm doing on Star Trek, the original series, episode, or the first technical episode, The Man Trap. Are you ready for that super geeky moment? It's coming. It's coming for you. It's coming for you. It's coming for you. Like I said, it's coming. And end of geeky moment. There it is. Got out of my system. Sorry, it might not be the original exact music that Alexander Courage did, but it's still Star Trek. You know it is. So guys, welcome, or if you've already seen my channel before, welcome back. I am the Philadelphia Whovian. And for this video, yes, we're talking of that beautiful thing, the original Star Trek series. First episode of the series. Okay, first of all, let me just express my elation at this show. Star Trek, the original show. First of all, I was raised on Star Trek, admittedly. I was raised on Star Trek, The Next Generation. And eventually, I saw Deep Space Nine and a little bit of Voyager, but Next Generation was what I was raised on. Sorry, there's a dog barking outside. Hold on. I think the dog went and made a friend. Almost done. There we go. Hopefully dog's done. Okay. So yes, Star Trek, the original series. Now, Star Trek, the original series is something that I knew about naturally as a kid growing up, but I never actually saw until one day my mom got a hold of it on TV and she said, we're watching this. We're going to go watch it. It's Star Trek, the original series. And the first story I saw was actually not The Man Trap. It was a different episode, but I'll get into that later. Either way, as a little kid, sitting down and watching the original Star Trek was a magical moment for me. There was just something about this show that just was beautiful. And when you're a little kid, it's magical. It takes you away. It takes you far up and beyond and doing this incredible thing of transporting you through all of space, and sometimes even through time as well. And Star Trek, the original series, aired in the 1960s, and it was created by Gene Roddenberry, who also was the producer. And when it comes to this collection, when I got it into the DVD, I got it in the mail, and it came out of the envelope, I was excited, opened it up, and I saw the first actual episode they had on this was The Man Trap. So we're going to be talking about The Man Trap for this video. And if you're thinking to yourself, wait a minute, what is she doing ignoring the pilot of this show? And the pilot episode was called The Cage. I'm going to be getting into that later because the pilot, if anyone who's watched the original Star Trek series, knows the pilot episode was used later on for another two-parter. Yeah. So let's just save that magic for when it really, really, really counts. Okay, so now we're going to go with The Man Trap. Again, airing in 1960s. Star Trek was iconic, and it was actually not only iconic in general. This was a show that was ahead of its time. And now and again, when you hear people talk about Star Trek, you're going to hear some things about how it's dated or about how it wasn't as progressive. I'm going to get into that nonsense later on. Right now, I'm going to talk about the actual story, The Man Trap. The Man Trap, okay, from what I recall, forgive me, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was directed by Mark Daniels and written by George Clayton Johnston. Correct me if I'm totally wrong about that. And of course, the original music of the original Star Trek was written by Alexander Courage. Thank you so much. But when it comes to this Star Trek copy, this was remastered and by a lot of incredible visual effects artists. The men who worked on the remastering and the women who worked on the remastering of Star Trek deserve an award. They made it beautiful. And the reason why it worked, the reason why they were so good at remastering Star Trek, the original show, was because they were fans of the original show. And that's always nice to hear. Now, Matt Jeffries also has to be commended. Matt Jeffries is the designer who designed the Enterprise. And he specifically said he wanted the Enterprise to have both masculine and feminine parts to it, angles and designs to it. And he did a very good job with that. So now we get into the actual episode of The Man Trap and the crew of the Enterprise. Now, The Man Trap is a story about how, again with it being the opening story, is about we've got Dr. McCoy and Captain Kirk and of course another red shirter, the security guys, beamed down to a planet or planetoid where pretty much only two people who are there, and that is archaeologist Robert Carter and his wife Nancy. Now Nancy, she actually is kind of like the sweetheart ex-girlfriend of Dr. McCoy from 10 years ago, so he has not seen her in 10 years. The reason why Kirk and McCoy are beaming down to this planet are for two reasons. One, because every single year annually, they have to go down to these sort of planets to give people on the planets checkups to make sure they're still healthy, but also to give them more provisions. And one thing that Nancy and her husband Robert have been desperately needing is more salt. But when they get there, not everything is as it seems. It turns out Nancy is not who they thought Nancy was. Dr. McCoy, when he first sees her, he of course is amazed and raptured by her. He sees the woman who he left behind or was separated from 10 years ago, and she looks the exact same. But Captain Kirk sees a Nancy who would be 10 years older. She's got gray hair and everything. She clearly has aged. Then the third person with him was a security guy, or a red shirter, I believe. He might have been a red shirter. I could be wrong. I'm so used to the red shirters being the ones who die that I could be totally wrong with the color of his shirt. But he sees a woman he knew from a pleasure planet. So she looks like drop dead gorgeous. She's blonde and everything. It turns out this creature... Oh, crap. I realize I'm going to be giving away so much from the episode. So guys, I should clarify now. If you have not seen The Man Trap, go see it, then come back. I'm going to spoil it for you. I'm going to totally spoil it for you. Totally spoil it for you. Totally spoil it for you. Okay, here we back. Okay. So it turns out Nancy has been killed about, a year or year and a half or 2 years ago, and this creature that killed her can assume the shape of any person, but also it chooses to assume the shape of the person who you desire the most to lure you in. It's like a siren. It lures you in, and then it uses you to suck the salt out of your body, because that's how it's nourished. It feeds off of salt, and we humans by nature have salt in us, so it will kill you by leaving the salt, by absorbing all the salt from your body. And of course Robert knew about this, the husband knew about this, and he allowed it to masquerade as Nancy even after it killed Nancy, because of that concept of the buffalo, the last of its kind. And also, the way he saw this creature was just doing what it had to do to keep on surviving. Again, the buffalo, the last of its kind. While we've got this episode, we meet Captain Kirk, played by William Shatner. We have Dr. McCoy, played by DeForest Kelley. Mine slipped there, DeForest Kelley. And then we have Spock. Ooh, Spock. Okay, I'm gonna go. We've got Spock. We've got Spock, played by Leonard Nimoy. And my God, that man could wear those ears. Oh, he could really wear those ears. Okay, moving on. We also in this episode have Sulu, played by George Takei, and then we have Nichelle Nichols, who is playing Uhura as well. I hope I didn't get that wrong. I believe it's Nichelle Nichols. It should not be Michelle. I think I got it right. I think I got Nichelle Nichols right, because she's totally awesome. Oh, and I think it's Grace Lee Whitney who plays the yeoman. Yeah, there's another woman on there. She's blonde. The yeoman. I think it's Grace Lee Whitney. Correct me if I'm wrong there. She's usually Nichelle Nichols is the name I remember the most when it comes to the original series. So this also is a Desilu production, Star Trek. What I mean by that is a Desilu production was the company that was run by Desi Arnaz and Lucille Ball. Those who know the show I Love Lucy, that's Desi Arnaz is Ricky Ricardo and Lucille Ball is Lucy. They had a company called Desilu Productions. It was Desilu Productions that founded and therefore, created through Gene Roddenberry's work, Star Trek. And I find that always so amazing that Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz were there, especially Lucille, was there to promote and encourage Star Trek. Even when people did not like it or there were naysayers, they still believed in it anyway. Now, with this story, fun little fact of trivia is with the Man Trap, there was actually some debate about what should be the very first episode that aired of Star Trek. There were some people who opted for The Naked Time, an episode that happens later in Series 1, to be the opening for Season 1. The Naked Time and not the Man Trap, but instead they went with the Man Trap. And my overall thoughts is that that was actually a very good idea, because even though I like the Naked Time more than the Man Trap, first of all, might be an unpopular opinion. I know some people who do not like the Man Trap. I personally really like the Man Trap. I think it was a very good story to start off the show with. It gets you interested in the characters. You know who they all are. All the dialogue is very good at, again, augmenting who each character is and also still sticking to the situation. And that's what they said about Star Trek. When it comes to working on the stories, they said when it came to Star Trek, they were always focusing on one thing. Each episode focused on one thing. And if you added too much to it, it would get really cloudy. So they always focus on one thing. And that's what the Man Trap does really well. It focuses on that one thing, and everything happens around that thing. You have the characters revolving around the plot, rather than the plot revolving around the characters. And I always like plot-driven things when it comes to great characters within the plot than it is character-driven stuff, but the plot is not so strong. That is personally just me. So I actually like the Man Trap. I think it was a very good way of starting off the show, because also it's not the best episode of Season 1. That's a good thing. It's oftentimes good for your first episode to not always be the best, just in case you because sometimes if it's the best episode, you'll spend your entire time trying to be as good as that first episode and never being able to fully reach it. So I like that the Man Trap, to me personally, is very good, but there are better episodes to come. Also, when I thought about this, I said, hey, why don't I... Sorry, I wrote this down. In each episode, choose my favorite moment or favorite line. And for this one, my favorite line or my favorite interaction is actually between Uhura and Captain Spock. Well, the first time we see them, where Uhura says, why don't you call me an attractive woman? And then, or why don't you tell me about the moons on your planet? I think her exact line was, when it comes to, tell me about what the moon is like on your planet. He says back, Spock says, Vulcan has no moon, Miss Uhura. And she replies, I am not surprised, Mr. Spock. I don't know why, but I love that because it says everything it needs to say about these two characters without directly saying it. Indirect speech is oftentimes more effective than direct speech. That's how I've always felt. If you can arrive at what you need to say in a more indirect way, but it still says it directly, that's what you're always aiming for. You can't always achieve it when you're writing, but that's what you aim for. And what I like also about the Man Trap, and I thought was very good, was the fact that with the Man Trap, I'll be very honest, I like the brightness of it, but I also liked how from the very beginning we have Captain Kirk. He is narrating because he's given his captain's log, and from the very beginning you hear him talk about how They weren't aware of the time when it came to Nancy that all three of them, Dr. McCoy, the security guard, and him, were seeing three entirely different women. So you hear his captain's log going over the episode as the episode is unfolding. So it becomes not about what's happening, but how is it going to be resolved. Because we know the captain eventually knows about it, so how are they all going to go about knowing and learning about what happens? Because we already knew by the very beginning they found out what happened, and it's all retrospective, going back and reflecting on it. And with Star Trek, again, let's do this a quick take on like the political concept of this. Okay, every now and again you're gonna come across some idiots who are mad at the original Star Trek for what they call not being as politically correct as a show should have been. It's not as diverse as it should have been, or the women are wearing really skimpy dresses. First of all, the women looked sexy to me, and they were strong while looking sexy. Therefore, I'm not one of those people whose idea of empowering women is to make them feel bad for being sexy. I do not find that to be an empowering moment. I find it to be disempowering, because for me, they look sexy, but again, for me, they were mostly covered up. They were covered up literally from their necks down to the top of their thighs. It was just their legs that were exposed, and to me, I'm like, it's the legs. It's the legs. The rest of them was covered up in every other important place for a body to be covered up. So, quite frankly, if you're going to get on my nerves about that one, I'm not going to care. No offense, not going to care. I thought the women looked amazing. And again, if you're going to do that thing where your idea of being politically correct and all about women's rights is you dismiss all the brave actions of a female because she looks sexy while she's being brave and awesome, you are actually pushing us women backwards and not forwards, because you're letting your idea of sexy get in the way of ignoring how courageous she is or how great of a character she is, but you're also thinking sexy is wrong. But to me, sexy can be a form of empowerment and not disempowerment. All depends upon what the woman does while she is being sexy. It's her actions. When it comes to the cultural diversity, this is the 1960s. Star Trek, the original series, was futuristic and really progressive for its time. It was doing things for the diversity that was not done for a long time in other areas. This was incredibly good progress that was happening in Star Trek, the original series. So I'm not going to attack you about that. And about Captain Kirk being a womanizer. It's something that just happened in the storytelling, but when it came to Captain Kirk, people always said that, oh, he's a womanizer. Fun fact, that was never intentional in the series. The writers never intended to make Kirk into a womanizer. It was just simply about they're bringing beautiful women every now and again on set, and Captain Kirk is a guy on a ship where he's the captain. He can't have romantic relationships on the ship, so he's kind of romantically starved. So he's going to have relationships with women that he just meets because it gives him a chance to have a connection with somebody else. But I'll get into that later. Again, with the man trap, I absolutely do very much enjoy it. And when it comes to the politics or a lot of the issues that were happening at the time around Star Trek, that also has to be noted. Star Trek was a time where a lot of terror was happening all around the world. But if I get the chance to do another Star Trek video, I'll talk about that later. So guys, thank you so very much for watching my Star Trek The Man Trap review. Sorry if it was longer than expected, but there was a lot to cover. And I was just so excited for it. Yes, there was a lot to cover. There was. And I had a great time talking about this. I hope to God someone watches this particular review of mine, because I really want to do the next episode, the review of that next episode, Charlie X, next week, and I want to do every single week do an episode from Star Trek the original series. And if that appeals to my audience, then I'd like to do another week by week reviewing of episodes from another show that's sci-fi that I like, but I'll see how this video goes first. So guys, thank you so much for watching. You were awesome. You were great. Thank you. Yes, Star Trek. Do you watch Star Trek, the original series, every now and again? Have you ever seen Star Trek, the original series? If you have not, I recommend giving it a try. The designers and the artists who remastered it were geniuses. Did a great job on it. And if you have seen the original Star Trek series, have you seen The Man Trap? If you have seen The Man Trap, please let me know down below in the comment section. Guys, thank you so much. Live long and prosper.